Hey, what's up guys, welcome to FineGap, and in today's video I'm going to explain you the use callback hook in React.js. So without any delay, let's start. The basic purpose of use callback hook is to optimize the performance of our React application. Now the question is how use callback will optimize the performance. So let me tell you with an example. You know that in our React application we have different components that re-renders upon different conditions. But now for example you have an app component and you have a child component here. So I just write my component, but this component do not exist in my application. So for example we have this child component and this child component, this child as well. So we have main component app.tsx. Inside this, for example, we have two more child components. For example, there is also a button like this. Obviously we will learn with an example, but currently I'm just teaching you the theory with an example. So for example, this is a button like increment. Now for example, user click on increment button, some of your state may be changed and you want your this component to be re-rendered with the app.tsx, but you notice that this child component is also re-rendering. Either you still do not need this component to re-render, but it is still re-rendering, and obviously you know that the more components will be re-rendering your application, the performance will decrease. So maybe this child component will take either 200 milliseconds or 500 milliseconds to re-render, so obviously it will decrease the performance of your application. So to prevent this extra re-render we use callback. So this was a little bit theory of this use callback. Now I will teach you with the practical. First of all we will do a practical and I will show you the problem, and then we will use the use callback hook to solve that problem. So let's start. First of all I will remove them, and let me hide this as well. We also need to remove this. So we have a simple functional component in our app.tsx. First of all, I will write code for my app component and we will also create a child component. So let me do that. We need to import useState from React, and inside our app component we will define two states. The first state will be count and the second state would be to dos. If you are unaware about useState hook, I recommend you to learn useState first, then you can resume or to watch this video. The first state count have initial value of 0, and similarly the second state to dos have an initial value of an empty array. Then inside this component we will have two methods. The first method will be increment, which will increment our state by 1, you can see, and we have a second method named add to do. So this will just insert a simple element new to do inside our this array. So each time this function will be called, inside our this array this string will be added like this. For example, first of all our this component will be called, array will look like this, and second time when our this function add to do will be called, our array will look like this. So let me remove this because we want initial value to be an empty array, and this is a spread operator. So spread operator means, for example, if previously we have add 3 components or 3 elements in our array, so these 3 components plus the new component, so it will create an array of 4 elements, and again set to our this to do's state. So I hope you will understand the purpose of these two methods. Now for example, inside our return statement we have a button, and once we have set on click listener, once user will click on this button, we will call the increment method that we have created here, and it simply means our the state value will be incremented by 1 as we have write in our logic. And now let me zoom out a little bit, and now in the last, for example, we have a child component in app.tsx and we will simply call this component like this. Before doing anything, let me type /, and we need to define this component. So I will open the sidebar. Inside this we have a source folder, and I have already a components folder exist in my source code. I will right click on it, click new, and for example todos.tsx. so we have defined another component, and here let me type rfce. so I have installed a React extension in my VS Studio Code. So whenever I type rfce, so it create a simple functional component for me. Okay, now what I'm going to do, inside this we need to import the the memo. So memo means that memorize this component and only re-render this components once its state or its props will be changed. And we need to wrap this memo return in memo like this. We don't need this obviously, so we have done this. Now for example, you know that inside this we are passing two props. The first props is to dos, an array that contain our tasks, and the second props is add to do method, which is used to insert a new to do list inside our to do state. So we are passing two props. So similarly inside our to dos we need to receive these props as an object. So let me type here to dos and add to do, or you can simply go there and copy this, paste here, and also you can copy this add to do props and paste here. It means we have passed our state and our method inside this, but it means we can access this method and this to do's inside this. So now let me type here, instead of this let me create a here an empty fragment. Inside this I will type h2 and my to do's colon, and here let me type here to do's dot map. Inside this we will pass an arrow function. The first parameter it will take the to do, and the second parameter would be index. So now we will simply, what we are going to do, we are going to return a p element, and because we are working with React, so we need to define a unique key for our each p element. We can do this by passing index as a key to this p element, and here let me type here to do. So in each iteration an element from our array, for example which will be a new to do, will be set to this variable, and we are just creating a p element and returning here. And now let me type here button and add to do, and on click we need to call a function name add to do, which we are receiving as prop and passing to this child component here as a prop, and we have defined this function here inside our app.tsx. Now the question is that each time, for example we increment, we click on this button and we increment, so it means our this state will be updated, and state updation means this app component will be re-rendered. And once this component will be re-rendered, maybe we are expecting that this to do's function will not be re-rendered because we have used the memo. We have used the memo to memorize this function, and it means only if the to do's state will be updated or this function should be re-rendered, otherwise this function should not re-rendered. Let me type here console.log. so you can see in the console to do's component re-renders. Let me type here and semicolon. So now first of all I will click on here terminal and new terminal. Inside this we need to type here npm run dev to run our application, and from here I will copy this. Let me open the browser and paste this link here. You can also control click on it to directly open this in your browser. Let me right click, inspect and console. Okay, we have an error to do is not defined. So yes friend, inside our app.tsx we need to import this to do's component as well. Import to do's from components and to do's. We have imported this, and now let me refresh. So you can see that it is working now very fine. I have zoomed it a little bit. Okay, one more thing is I'm also going to paste my this state which is count here. So you can see and also let me type here, let me cut this br and paste here, or paste this br here, so you can see each line in the next line. Now for example, if I click on the increment, let me zoom this console as well, and if I click on, let me refresh it as well, and if I click on increment button, you can see that our main app component is re-rendered, but our to-dos component re-renders. Again, let me click on this button, and now you can see that our here we have a 4 value. It means our to-dos component is still re-rendering even we have used the memo which is used to memorize the function. So let me do a small thing here. If we remove this add to do, let me cut this and paste here and comment this. So for example, we are only passing one prop, and or no, we need to change a code inside it, but let me tell you the reason. If you will only pass your state as a props and you will use the memo, so your this child component will not be re-rendered because you are using memo, and inside memo your child component will only re-render once its state or props. If these will be changed, then it will be re-rendered. But in our case, it looks that the props are not changing, but the props are changing. So the question is, where props are changing? Because we are passing a callback function add to do as a prop, and each time in React your component will be, when re-renders, the child methods like increment and add to do, these methods will also recreated. So these functions will be recreated. So it means once this function will be recreated, so props are changed. So because props are changed, it means that this function is calling this child to do's component is re-rendering again and again even we have used the memo. So once you need to pass the method inside this child component, but you only want to re-render this component on a specific condition, so here we use the use callback hook. So now for example, we have this method named add to do. What I'm going to do is we need to type here use callback, and inside this we need to cut this method, pass this method as a first parameter, and the second parameter is we need to pass our dependencies. For example, I will copy my this state and I will paste this state here, and that's it. So before using this use callback, you need to import this from React as you import use state. So now it means each time our this function will not be recreated once our this app.tsx will be re-rendered. This function will only recreated once this to do state, I means that we are passing as a dependency, once this dependency will be changed, then our this method will be recreated. So now it means that these props will not be changed if we will only increment button, because incrementing a button is only updating our count state. So it means not the to do dependency will be changed, so the first prop will be not changed, and obviously we have wrap this add to do method in a use callback hook. So it means even this dependency will be not be changed, so this method will not be changed. So if this method will not be changed, it means the second props we are passing inside our to do's component will not be changed. So now let me first of all show you by refreshing this, and I'm going to delete clear the console. Now let me click on increment. So now you can see that nothing happens even we have console here to do's component renders. So now you can see that we have optimized the performance of our application by preventing the extra re-renders, because we only need to re-render this component once we will add a new to do. For example, now if I click on it, so you can see that this to do component re-renders, and if I click on it again, you can see that this component re-rendered, but here you notice 4. But if I click on increment, so this to do component will not be re-rendered, and obviously we do not require this. And in the last, here is a tip: you should not wrap every function in use callback. You should only, this is not a good practice. You only need to define your simple functions. But for example, if you're passing a function or a method as a props, and you have used the memo inside your child component, and you only want your child component to be re-rendered once its props will be changed, so then you can use the use callback. So friends, this is how you can improve the performance of your React application. So I hope that this video will be helpful for you. If you have any question, you can ask us in the comment section. We will try to answer your question. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel for our regular videos. And finally, thanks for watching.